The mitzvah of Yetziat Mitzrayim is the foundation of all our faith in the world. Every morning after Shacharit, we read 13 Ani Ma'amin, Yud Gimel Ikarim of the Emunah, and then we read, the Ashkenaz read Shesh Zechirot, the Sephardic people read Asara Zechirot. 10 mitzvat aseh midoraita, to remember 10 different things. One of the things that we remember is Yetziat Mitzrayim, and it's a mitzvah to remember Yetziat Mitzrayim every day. Not only Pesach, all year round. The Torah, in many, many mitzvot, mentions Yetziat Mitzrayim. We could be talking about one thing, and somehow we stick it in. Yetziat Mitzrayim keeps on coming up. Read the Chumash over and over again, it keeps on coming up. It starts off, Anochi Hashem Elokecha Asher Hotziticha Me'eretz Mitzrayim. When God comes to Am Yisrael and reveals Himself and talks to them face to face for the first time, words that they couldn't handle. The Chachamim teach us they all died. They had to have Tchiyat HaMetim. They couldn't hear God's words. But when He spoke to them for the first time and said, Anochi Hashem, He didn't say, Anochi Hashem Shebarati Shamayim Va'aretz. I'm God who created earth. No. He said, I'm God who took you out of Egypt. You would think if He's presenting Himself, He would present Himself at His greatest strength, that He created the whole world. Everything's His. No! What do we present? Yetziat Mitzrayim. Look in the Torah when the Torah discusses eating kosher or non-kosher. In Parashat Shmini, the Torah says all the halachot, this you could eat, this you can't eat, don't eat this, don't eat that, and so on. Ani Hashem ha'ma'aleh etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim. Because I'm the God who took you out of Egypt. What does that have to do anything now? You're telling us the laws. Okay, we listen. Somehow, Mitzrayim goes right in. There's a halacha called Isur Mishkolot. That you're not allowed to cheat in business on weight. Sometimes you buy a package of food and it says on it 1 pound. And you go home and you weigh it and it's less than a pound. That's an Isur Doraita of Mishkolot. That means they sold you a wrong weight. It's not the weight. What you paid for is not what you got. You gotta be very careful with that. That's why if you pay attention in many of the bakeries, I saw this here also, this beautiful practice. You go buy cake and they charge you by the pound. Before they charge you for the cake, they first weigh the box. Because the box is not cake, and you don't want to pay by the pound for a box. So let's say the box weighs 3 grams. So they start the weight at -3 of a gram before they weigh it with the box. So they shouldn't be cheating you on the few cents that it may cost more. Because in Isur Doraita, Mishkolot, it's not a joke, it's a serious thing. When the Torah discusses this Isur of cheating people and weight, again, I'm God, the God who took you out of Egypt. Suddenly Egypt comes in. What does Egypt have to do with anything now? In Egypt they didn't do business. Isur Ribit. There's a sin in the Torah to loan a person money with interest, a Jew to a Jew with interest. And I know that today many people do hard money lending, and they do it with a heter iska, they call it, and that's their justification for what they're doing. And maybe they're not doing a sin, but they still don't avoid the curse of the Gemara, the nechasav mitmotetim, that it's guaranteed that they'll lose all their money. And look at the financial crash in 2008. Who were the first people who went under? All the hard money lenders. Because suddenly the property and their equity that they had against the loans was worthless, and they had no way of getting anything back. And we have many, many stories like that just in the community here alone. And that's what the Gemara said, don't lend with interest. It's not a good idea. Even with a heter iska. On this, the Torah says, because I'm God, the God of Egypt. We're talking about business now. What Egypt? And mitzvah after mitzvah, the Torah does the same thing. Tefillin. What do you have written inside of your tefillin? Yetziat Mitzrayim. Mezuzah. Yetziat Mitzrayim. Kriyat Shema. We read every morning, every night. Yetziat Mitzrayim. Shabbat. Zecher Yetziat Mitzrayim. In the prayers we say it many times. Sukkot. Again, Zecher Yetziat Mitzrayim. Everything, almost every mitzvah, in one way or the other, the Torah suddenly links it to Egypt. Because Egypt is the foundation to everything. Even luck. Everybody wants to have good luck in life. Mazal is Rashi Tevot Zecher Yetziat Mitzrayim. Even your luck is linked to Yetziat Mitzrayim. Why? What does one have to do with the other? On the night of the Seder, we do many mitzvot. The majority of the mitzvot that we do have to do with our mouth. either what comes out of our mouth, like the Haggadah, or what goes into our mouth, like the matzah, maror, the wine that we drink, and everything else. And that's why it's called Pesach. Pesach, a mouth that talks, everything revolves around the mouth. Mitzvah v'gata l'midcha. And all of this is all one encompassing thing of Yetziat Mitzrayim. The mitzvah that we're discussing tonight is the mitzvah of the 4 cups. The 5th cup is a class on its own. That we have to discuss a different time. Tonight we're going to discuss the first 4. We know, ask your child who's in pre-1A, why do we drink 4 cups of wine and the Seder? So he's going to tell you, Keneged, the 4 Lishonot HaGeulah. There were 4 words of redemption in the Torah. Votzeti v'itzalti v'ga'alti v'lakachti. Because of those 4 words, we have 4 cups. Each one is another level of redemption. That every child knows. But the Chachamim, our holy rabbis in different places, teach us that there are more reasons than just those 4 Lashonot HaGeulah. For example, the Midrash Rabbah writes that the reason why we drink 4 cups on the night of Pesach is kineged, is to resemble the 4 times that it says the word kos, cup, in the dream that the Sara Mashkim had when Yosef was in the jail by Paro over there in Egypt. And you look to yourself and you say, what do I care what he dreamt? What does that have to do with me? And why today am I drinking 4 cups? Because when the Torah says the story of the dream, it said kos 4 times. But this is what the Midrash says. There must be a reason. And here comes another one. This is the Grand Slam, I call it. There is the Yerushalmi, Masechet Megillah. The Yerushalmi says that when we prepare for Pesach, we begin preparing for Pesach at least 30 days before. We learn the halachot, Shoshim Yom Kodem Achag, 30 days before. But really the Yerushalmi says the preparation for Pesach begins even before that. When do we begin preparing for Pesach? That we finished last week reading the 4th of the extra haftarot, maftirs, that we add on from Adar before Pesach. We began by reading Shekalim. We continued by reading Parashat Zachor. Then we read Parashat Parah. And now this past week we read Parashat HaChodesh. We have 4 parashiyot that we read. Comes the Yerushalmi and writes, you know why you drink 4 cups of wine on the night of Pesach? It's to resemble Kineged, the 4 parashiyot, Shkalim, Zachor, Parah, Chodesh. Anybody understands the connection? Shkalim is money. What does that have to do with anything? Zachor is Amalek. We're wiping him out. That's why we're drinking cups. What does one have to do with the other? But the Yerushalmi is not done. The Yerushalmi says, Amar Rabbi Levi. Rabbi Levi comes and says, you got to learn more than that. Siman lezeh. I'll give you a sign to this idea. Listen to this sign. We got to learn a little factual halacha. When you read these 4 parashiyot, you don't read them in 4 consistent weeks. Because according to the calendar, the way it comes out, there's normally at least an extra Shabbat in the middle. And there's only 4 parashiyot, not 5. So one Shabbat, it's called Shabbat Hafsakah. There's a Shabbat that we have a break in the middle of the 4 parashiyot that we don't read an extra Haftarah. When do we do this Shabbat Hafsakah? So the Yerushalmi writes, if you want to stop, if it works out on the calendar to stop between Parashat Shkalim and Parashat Zachor, it's fine, I'll stop. You want to stop between the Parashat of Zachor and Parashat Parah, also you could stop. You want to stop between the Parashat of Parah and HaChodesh? No, you're not allowed to stop. That week, you can't take off. You read Parah, the following week, no matter what, has to be Parashat HaChodesh. If the idea is to have them consistently, so all 4 should have to be in a row. If it doesn't make a difference that we have a little break in the middle, who cares where the break is? What does it make a difference which parasha we stop in the middle of? This is a serious question. So we see over here, obviously, there's very, very deep stuff going on in the 4 cups. It's not 4 cups, we're so used to drinking 4 cups. It's not that. There's so much deeper in it that's going on behind this. So in order to understand this, we'll go on a little bit of a journey. There is a Gemara that appears twice in Masechet Berachot. Once in Daf Daled Amud Bet, once in Daf Tet Amud Bet, if I'm not mistaken. Could be appears the 3rd time now that I'm thinking about it. The Gemara discusses an interesting thing. Eizehu ben olam haba. Who's going to olam haba? Now right away you're going to ask, what type of question is that? Kol Yisrael yesh lahem chelek olam haba. Every Jew is. So in order to understand what the Gemara is asking, we have to learn an interesting thing that the Shlach HaKadosh elaborates at great length in. There are 3 levels of people that go to Olam Haba. Every single Jew has a chelik to Olam Haba. Kol Yisrael, everybody has a chelik in Olam Haba. No matter what he's up to in life, no matter what he's doing, everybody has a chelik in Olam Haba. Some people may not get there right away, but it exists, it's there for them, it's dedicated for them, that's his portion. Everybody has it. This is something that belongs to everybody. Then there's the next level. The next level, the Shlach HaKadosh writes, is a ben olam haba. What does that mean? So for example, a person has a guest in his house. So even if he stays by him for a month, it's not his child, it's not his brother, it's a guest that's staying for a month. It's not his house, but his own son, that's his house. My father's house is my house. Same thing, it's my family. What the Gemara is saying, according to the Shlai, is that a ben olam haba means that olam haba is like his house. He's like the son of olam haba. He walks in just like you walk into your father's house without knocking on the door. Same thing. He walks right into olam haba. He's very friendly with olam haba. That's a good thing to get to. But believe it or not, there's a higher level than that as well. And this level was only written, I think, I hope I'm right, I'm not sure, but I think so, if the computer's working well in my brain. I think only 5 times in Talmud Bavli there's a mention of this. It's called Mizuman L'chayei Olam Haba. Shlach HaKadosh writes that's the highest level. Rabbi Elazar ben Nodaya, for example, the Gemara writes about him, is Mizuman L'chayei Olam Haba. It's not only, it's like that Olam Haba is his home, it's a level higher than that. Mizuman means he's invited. Meaning God's calling him. Come already. Olam Haba is waiting for you. That's the highest level. VIP pass to Olam Haba. Tonight we're going to discuss the first 2. The third goes with the 5th cup. That'll have to be some other time. We're going to talk the first 2. To understand the first 2 a little better, I want to tell you a beautiful parable that a rabbi, who I have no idea what his name is, said over. He's one of the rabbis that says a shiur in a synagogue in Borough Park. That's a 24-hour synagogue called Shomer Shabbat. They have minyanim there at any time. You could pray shacharit, mincha, arvit, almost at the same, 1 o'clock in the afternoon they still have shacharit, and at 9, it's dark outside, they still have mincha. It's unbelievable what goes on there. Minyan and after minyan. So besides for that, they also had a bunch of shiurei Torah. In one of these shiurei Torah, there was a rabbi there who spoke. And he was discussing this Shlach HaKadosh. And he said a beautiful, beautiful example to explain what the Shlach HaKadosh means. Zak Baruch, thank you very much. He said a beautiful example to explain what the Shlach HaKadosh means. If any of you traveled overseas recently, so I'm sure you will relate to this example well. When you come back to the United States of America, you get off the plane, you have a few obstacles before you get home. One is called immigration, and then the next one is called customs. And each one has their task. Now here's what happens to everybody who comes off the plane. I'm sure you all experienced it. Many of you Shiva students must have came back from Israel now. You just went through this. You get off the plane, you walk through a whole thing, they warn you on the plane already, you're not allowed to have a cell phone, you're not allowed to have this, you're not allowed to have that. Then they give you a blue and white slip. You have to fill out a questionnaire on the plane, your name, your address, your phone number, your citizenship, where your parents were born. Did you touch any animals? Do you have more than $10,000 cash on you? I always write, I wish. A whole list over there. You got to do a whole checklist. How long are you staying here? What citizen? Fine. So now you got your paper with your passport. And you were warned, don't use your cell phone, don't do anything wrong, behave yourself like a good boy. You get off the plane, you walk through Kennedy Airport, 15-minute exercise after your flight, and you come to what's called the immigration room. And over there, they have a selection. There's a lady standing there, who probably didn't even graduate high school. She looks at you with a dirty look. They never smile, I don't know why. It's like a halakha by them, they're not allowed to smile. Are you a U.S. citizen or not? If you're a U.S. citizen, go left. Not a U.S. citizen, go right. Selection. Okay? But it's not done. The U.S. citizen filled out his paper. The non-U.S. citizen filled out his paper. This guy has a passport. This guy has a passport. The non-U.S. citizen, if anything, is coming even with more credentials. He got himself a visa before, which was a whole headache in the first place. That means they already gave him a pre-approval in an American consulate in a different country to come into America. And now look what happens. The American goes to this guy who's sitting there, and he looks at him, he smiles to him. That guy is allowed to smile, I guess. And he says, good morning, good morning. Where are you coming from? I'm coming from Israel. What airline? El Al. He looks at that paper, that blue and white paper, and he swipes the passport in 1 second, stamps it, smiles to you, welcome home, sir, writes 1 on the paper, that means you're a low risk, and you go to get your suitcase. The other guy, the immigrant, who doesn't have a passport, instead of waiting 5 minutes online, sometimes can wait an hour and a half online. Sometimes even longer. My rabbi from Israel that came here recently told me he waited 3 hours and 5 minutes online on the immigration. 3 hours and 5 minutes, an old man. But that's the way it is. And then, nobody's smiling to you. Why are you coming to the United States? What citizen are you? If I would be an Israeli, giving him an Israeli passport, I would say, are you blind? I gave you an Israeli passport and a blue and white paper that says I live in Israel. Why are you asking me all these questions again? And he re-asks you every single question on the list over there. Where are you staying? I wrote it for you already. He's asking it to you. And only if you pass all his questionnaire and he doesn't suspect that you're up to no good or you plan on staying in the country illegally or anything else, then he says, okay, and he lets you go and he doesn't tell you welcome to our country. What's the difference? One guy is an American citizen. Not that it's a big yichus, by the way. But he's coming back to his country. So when he's coming back to his country, the country wants him there. He pays taxes there, he makes money there, he lives there. He's a benefit to the country, he's part of their society. So welcome home. It's a shame you were somewhere else. We want you to do your business here, not in China. The other guy is going back to his country. Meaning America is just a way of coming through either the tour, or in most cases to make money and take it out of the country. And he's not paying taxes, and he's not benefiting the country, and he's just costing the country money. They don't want him here. They let him in because they have to be civil. What should they do? But that's it. That's the extent. So the guy that we want here, we make it as pleasant, as easy, and as smiley as could be to him. The other guy, we give him a hard time. That's what it narrows down to. That's the logic behind the system. So this great rabbi over there, I wish I would know his name, he said the same thing in Olam Haba. He said a ben Olam Haba is a citizen. He's a citizen of Gan Eden. So it's true, 70 years, 120 years he was in this world. But now he came back to his thing. So he has a short line. They stamp his passport. Welcome home. Welcome back to your country. This is where your soul really came from, and this is where it belongs. Somebody who's not a ben Olam Haba, who only has a chelik Olam Haba, means he was a guy who to him this world was everything. So really that world is not his country. He's just a tourist there. So it's true, he's a Jew. He goes to Olam Haba. But he goes to Olam Haba after a questionnaire, because he's not a citizen of Olam Haba. That's the difference between the two people. Unbelievable chidush. Now let's go back to the Gemara. The Gemara asks, Ezu ben Olam Haba. Who's this person that's a citizen of Olam Haba? So you would think you would say, a guy who gave all his money to charity, or somebody who studied 18 hours a day Torah, or some big rabbi, right? That's what you would expect it to say. Somebody who was Mosir Nefesh for Chesed, for Bikur Cholim, for Achnasat Kala. None of the above. The Gemara says in Berachot twice, Ezu ben Olam Haba, Zeh hasomech geula l'tfilah. And the Gemara concludes that we're talking about the prayer of Arbit. When you pray Arbit, and you say Ga'al Yisrael, and right after you say the Amidah, you somech, you put together close the Geula, Ga'al Yisrael, the Inyan of Mitzrayim, together with the Amidah, the Shmonesre, you're Ben Olam Haba. What? That's what's important. Number one, boys, time to start praying Arbit. That's your Ben Olam Haba pass. It's a shame to lose it. Ladies, I advise you the same. I know you have excuses, I have kids and this and that, but Ben Olam Haba, it's worth it. Pray Arvit. But it doesn't make, what's the Gemara saying here? It doesn't make sense to us. This is what brings you to Olam Haba. So now we're going to go the other way and see that the Gemara doesn't seem to agree with this everywhere. There are many contradictions to this. Our time is very limited, so we're going to say only a few. But really there's a long list. For example, there is a Gemara that says, Gimel matanot tovot Natan l'Yisrael. Borei Olam gave Am Yisrael 3 great presents, gifts. V'chulan, and all those 3 presents that He gave us, lo natan ela al yedei yisurim. He didn't give it to us only through suffering. You have to suffer to get that gift. What are these 3 presents? Torah. Ena Torah niknet ela b'mishem emit atzmo aleh. It's not easy to learn. If it was easy to learn, we would all learn non-stop. It's hard. You have to focus, and you have to forget about all your other things, and it takes a big effort. It's not easy at all. So that's Eretz Yisrael. If Eretz Yisrael was easy to live in, we would all be there right now. Why are we living here? Because Eretz Yisrael is niknet b'yisurim. It's not easy to live there. There are many struggles, financial struggles, security struggles, other obstacles along the way. It's a very, very hard place to live in sometimes. So you want to acquire Eretz Yisrael, Yisurim, you have to be willing to suffer, to struggle for it. And then the third thing, Olam Haba. Olam Haba is a great gift, but you only get it through Yisurim. Wait a second. To be Somech Geula L'Tfilah, that's Yisurim? No, that's the easiest thing in the world. It takes 5 minutes every night. And not only you have a chelik Olam Haba when you do that, you're a ben Olam Haba, you're at a higher level. Olam Haba is your second home. So isn't that a direct contradiction? On one hand, the Gemara says Olam Haba only comes through Yisurim. On the other hand, the Gemara says Somech Geulat L'Tfilah is a ben Olam Haba. So which one is it? Number 1. Number 2. Another Gemara. Abilah told Ula that when he goes Ki Ailit Lahatam, when you go there to that place where he was going to, Shayle Bishloma de Rabruna. Make sure to ask how this Rabbi Rabruna, how's he doing? Find out about him. But don't just ask about, go to one guy, Rabruna, is he feeling okay? Is everything okay? Bima'amad kol achabura. Walk into the great synagogue when everybody's there, Friday night, packed house, and make a big announcement. How's Rav Bruna doing? For what? What's all the fanfare for? Comes the Gemara and writes, the Adam Gadolhu, because he's a great man, v'sameach b'mitzvot, and he's happy to do mitzvot. What makes him so great? The Gemara continues. Zimna chada, one day, samach geula l'tfilah, he was somech, he said close to geula to the amidah, v'lo yifsik l'chayech kol hayom, and the whole day he was smiling. That makes him so great. That's why we have to make a big announcement. If that's the case, this Friday night we should go into the synagogue and make a big announcement for each and every one of us, right after Arvit, because we're going to all be Somech Geula L'Tfilah. And they don't do that. And if they would do that, we would never get home for dinner. What's going on? Second of all, why does the Gemara say he didn't stop smiling all day? He had no other reason to smile except for the fact that he did this every day. What's the big deal over here? So to understand this, I want to bring out one more Gemara. Again, there's many, many more to say, but we're on a time bomb. It's a very famous Gemara. We used it in many different contexts. There's so many messages to learn from this Gemara. It talks about Chizkiyahu HaMelech when he got the famous visit from the prophet Yeshayahu ben Amoz. Yeshayahu ben Amoz comes to Chizkiyahu HaMelech for a visit, and he doesn't come to tell him anything exciting. Borei Olam gets him to go because Chizkiyahu is sick. He made Chizkiyahu sick because he wanted to convince Yeshayahu to go to him to do Bikur Cholim. and then gave a prophecy to him, right? A Navi doesn't decide what to say, what not to say. God tells him what to say. He says it, that's it. He's a parrot of God's words. He goes in to be mivaker tachole, to visit a sick person. What do you tell a sick person? Hopefully you'll feel better, everything will be okay, we care about you, we love you, right? That's what you should say. That's what I do when I go visit sick people. And Yeshaya ben Amos goes in, on God's commandment to go do the mitzvah, bikur cholim, and instead of going in to tell him how he's going to feel better and everything's going to be okay, he turns to Chizkiyahu HaMelech, the king of the Jewish nation, and he tells him, Tzav lebeitcha, sit down and write a will right now. Ki met ata velo tichyeh, because you're going to drop dead. Imagine you weren't feeling well one day and somebody came to you and said, I came to visit you because you're going to drop dead. What are you going to tell him? Hopefully you drop dead first. Get out of here. What do you want from me? What type of... And this is what God is sending a prophet for. This is what he says. This bikur cholim? This bikur metim maybe. What bikur cholim? What is met ata velo tichyeh? Somebody who's not alive is met, is dead. So the Gemara says, Ki met ata ba'olam hazeh. In this world you're going to die. Velo tichyeh la'olam haba. You don't even have olam haba. Chizkiyahu HaMelech, the king of the Jewish nation, doesn't have olam haba. Kol Yisrael yesh lehem chelek olam haba. Can't be. What's going on here? Second of all, what did he do so wrong? Chizkiyahu HaMelech asks him, what did I do wrong? So he told him, Dilo asakta bepirya v'revya, because you chose not to get married. Hear this? Because you chose not to get married. See how serious the Gemara takes those who get too comfortable in their single life. Tav lebetcha, ki met ata velo tichyeh barminan. Dilo asakta bepirya v'revya. Why didn't Chizkiyahu HaMelech get married? I'm sure there were plenty of good shidduchim for him. He was the king. Everybody wants to marry the king. So he turned to the Navi and he said, Mechila Navi, but I have a reason. He said, what's the reason? He said, because the Chazili, I saw in Ruach HaKodesh that I'm going to have kids that are going to be big sinners. Like Menashe. Terrible, terrible people. So why should I get married and have kids that are sinners? Better not to get married and not to have the sinners. And the Navi answers him, Bahadi de kavshe rachmana alam alei. What God decides your kids should be is God's decision. That's not your decision. And in the Torah it says to get married. So don't start calculating God's calculations. Let God make His calculations. Leave it up to Him. And that's why he heard this. He got scared. He said, you know what? I'm doing teshuvah. I'm getting married. So he turned to Yeshaya ben Amos and he told him, you know what? You have a daughter. She's single. Let's make a shidduch. I'll marry your daughter. And then Navi tells him, no thank you. So he says, why not? He says, because I want my daughter to have a husband that's going to live. You're going to die. Why would I let my daughter get married to a guy who's dying? And who has no olam haba? And at that point, Chizkiyahu HaMelech threw the prophet of God out of his house. He told him, Kaleh nevuatcha v'tzeh. Get out of here. Why? Ki afilu cherev chada munachat al tzavaro shel adam al yimna atzmo min harachamim. There's no such a thing as you're going to die. You could pray and you won't die. You could do teshuvah, you'll have olam haba. There's never a point that we give up hope. Comes the Gemara and says that at that point he prayed to God because he wanted to save his life. And when he prayed to God, he told him, Borei Olam, save me. Why save me? Ve'atov be'enecha asiti. Because I did the good things in your eyes. I did the right thing in your eyes. When we hear these words, I did the right thing in your eyes, and we're talking about Chizkiyahu HaMelech, what do you think it should be? What's the right thing that Chizkiyahu did? The Gemara says when Chizkiyahu became king, Na'atz cherev bepitcho shel bet midrash, he put a sword by the door of the bet midrash, and he forced everybody to sit and study Torah. And there wasn't a child, male or female, that didn't know all the halachot of Tumah and Tahara. It was a generation of all the Talmidei Chamim in the world possible. Every 6-year-old was a Gedol Torah. That's big, no? But that's not what he says, V'atov be'enecha asiti. When he has to pick in which merit, in which mitzvah he's praying to God, Borei Olam, save me because I did the right thing, the Gemara says, because samachti geula l'tfilah. That's it. That was the tov. That was the good. Because I said, when I prayed, I said, Geulah L'Tfilah. And therefore say, and he was saved. His prayer was answered. That's what we pick out of everything that he did in his life. He did so many things that seem to be so much greater. It's a pele. It's a bigger pele. Because Gemara in Sanhedrin Daf Chaf says about Chizkiah on the pasuk in Eshet Chayil, Sheker achen vehevel hayofi isha yirat Hashem hi titalal. The Gemara says Sheker achen is Doro shel Moshe, the generation of Moshe Rabbeinu. Hevel hayofi is Doro shel Yoshua bin Nun, the generation of Yoshua. Isha yirat Hashem hi titalal. Which generation that we praise is the generation of Yirat Shamayim? Doro shel Chizkiah. That means the Gemara is making him bigger than Moshe Rabbeinu, bigger than Yoshua. And what's the tov ve'enecha asiti? What's the great thing? I was somech Geulah L'Tfilah. How does that make sense? There's such a long list of other things. This is a big kushiyah that needs a big answer. So briefly to answer this, we'll learn another piece of the Gemara story. Gemara Masechet Ta'anit says that Eliyahu Hanavi used to visit Rav Broka Chozah. Where would he visit him? Not in his house. In the shuk of Lefet, in the marketplace of a place called Lefet. This marketplace of Lefet was a place of tzaddikim. That's where the tzaddikim used to shop. It wasn't the malls like today. It was the holy mall. They had different guidelines over there. One day, Eliyahu Hanavi meets the rabbi, Rav Broka Chozah, in the shuk of in the marketplace, and they're having a conversation, a casual conversation, friends, right? They go, listen, how you doing? Everything okay? Yeah. Rav Broka looks at Eliyahu Hanavi and says, I'm curious, I got a question for you. Maybe you can help me out with something. He says, sure, what do you want? He says, I want to know if there's anybody here that's a ben olam haba. We're talking about the marketplace is full of tzaddikim, talmidei chachamim. I would expect Eliyahu to say everybody. And Eliyahu Hanavi looks at the rabbi and he says, nobody. What? Nobody? Why nobody? A little bit later, there was a guy, the Gemara describes him, who walked into the marketplace not wearing tzitzit and wearing black shoes. In those days, black shoes was a symbol of Avodah Zarah. And the Gemara says he was dressed like a goy. He looked like a Gentile. Eliyahu Hanavi points to that guy and he says, you see that guy? He's the ben olam haba. All the rabbis, nothing doing. The guy who's not wearing tzitzit looks like a goy, he's the one. By the way, we should pause right here and say, before you ever judge a Jew or talk about a Jew, think twice. Because everybody that you would have said ben olam haba, Eliyahu Hanavi said not. And the one person that you wouldn't dream is a ben olam haba, exactly him, he's the ben olam haba. Comes the Gemara and says, Broka ran to the guy. He wanted to see, why is he better than all of them? He wanted to learn from him. And he asked him, Ma ma'asecha, what do you do? What makes you so special? And the guy told him, Rabbi, I got no time for you, and he left. So not only is he's without tzitzit, not only is he dressed like an Oved Avodah Zarah, he's arrogant too. He has no respect for the rabbi. He runs off on him. But Broka doesn't get insulted and he doesn't give up. He waits to the next day. And the next day he sees the guy coming back to the marketplace again. And when he comes back the next day to the marketplace, he goes over to him and he says, I'm not letting you off the hook. I gotta know, why you a ben olam haba? What makes you so great? And the guy tells him, listen, I'm not Talmid Chacham, I don't have much to sell. But I have two things. He says, what two things do you have? He said, thing number one that I have is that I'm in charge, I'm the warden of the prison. And the prison is co-ed, it's men and women. So I stay many long hours to be careful that there shouldn't be wrong things going on there. Because there's a lot of Jews in prison. Okay, number one. What else? Because number two, because I'm friendly with all the prisoners, and in the prison there are many very famous criminals, I hear them talking all the time. They talk very freely. So when I hear that they're planning to harm the Jews, I right away run to the rabbis and I tell them the inside information that I got in the prison, so they should pray to God to be mevatel the gezerah, and nothing should happen to the Jews. And that's why yesterday when you tried to talk to me, I couldn't talk to you. Because I was running to the other rabbis to tell them to pray, to save a decree that was about to happen. I was busy. Now Broka hears that. He says, okay, but I have a question. If that's the case, you're such a righteous man. Why don't you wear tzitzit? Why don't you dress like a Jew? He says, because if I would wear tzitzit and dress like a Jew, so in the prison, they would view me as a Jew. And then they wouldn't feel free to talk near me. And it's a problem with pikuach nefesh. I'm saving the Jews, so I'm not obligated. I have to dress differently. Halacha. Okay, Rabbi Broka is satisfied. The Gemara continues. The next day, he's back in the thing. Eliyahu Navi says, sees two people over there. Points to, tells Rabbi Broka, see those two people, those twin brothers? Those also are Bnei Olam Haba. So he goes running to them. They were more polite. They stopped for him. He says, and what do you guys do? They were comedians. Comedians. He says, so why does that make you a Ben Olam Haba? He says, because we walk around the marketplace, and every time we see a rabbi or somebody, any person that looks a little sad and down, we tell them good jokes. We get them, we snap them out of it. We make them happy. The Maharsha says, big deal. There's plenty of comedians. So all comedians are Bnei Olam Haba. I'm sure Seinfeld and Jay Leno, all these people, they're going to be excited to hear this Gemara. So the Maharsha says no. Why were they Bnei Olam Haba? Because they didn't go to make the person happy. When they saw a person, they saw God's child sad. And they knew if God's child sad, God sad with them. So they went to make God happy. That was their mission. So people had devoted their whole life to make God happy. By showing God that they want His children to be happy, they're Bnei Olam Haba. Fine. This is the words of the Gemara. Rav Steinman, God should bless him with a long life, from Bnei Brak, one of our older Gdolei Ador. He asked a simple question in his sefer on this Gemara. Rav Broka himself wasn't Somech Geula L'Tfilah? He was. So he's also Ben Olam Haba. All the rabbis there, they weren't Somech Geula L'Tfilah? They for sure were. So they were all Bnei Olam Haba. So why only these guys? What was the privilege of these three people over all the rabbis? So comes Rav Steinman and writes, you see from here that this business of Samech Geula L'Tfilah is not as simple as we think it is. And he explains a beautiful chidush based on the Gemara Masechet Zvachim. The Gemara Masechet Zvachim has an argument if Yitro came to Am Yisrael before Matan Torah or he came to Am Yisrael after Matan Torah. There's a discussion when he showed up. Did he show up before Matan Torah? Did he show up after Matan Torah? According to the opinion that he came before Matan Torah, the Yalkut Shimoni writes very scary words. Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu LeMoshe. Right before Matan Torah, God came to Moshe Rabbeinu, Yitro's son-in-law, and he told him, send your father-in-law back to Midian. So Moshe said, why? Why should I send him back to Midian? He said, because he can't be here by Matan Torah. Imagine today a kid goes to his father-in-law right before Ne'ilah, Yom Kippur. He says, Dad, get out of here. You can't be here by Ne'ilah. There's going to be a get that night. Moshe Rabbeinu, the Yalkut Shimoni, Midrash, almost 2,000 years ago, comes to his father-in-law right before Matan Torah, the greatest moment of Jewish history. Get out of here. You can't be here. And he left. And not only did he leave, he came back. That means he didn't even get insulted. Why? What's going on here? Comes the Midrash and says, Banai Savlu. God told Moshe Rabbeinu, my children suffered in Egypt. Yitro didn't suffer. He lived in Minyan. He was the Kohen Midian. He was the prince, the king. He had everything made. He went through 70 different idols. Every day he was a different pope. He didn't wait for smoke to come out of the Vatican. Whatever it was, he was this religion, that religion, Pope A, Pope B, Pope C, Pope D, every day. Everybody bowed down to him. They said, Yitro, yeah, our God. The Midrash's words, he was Yashav behashket. He sat calm, peacefully. Comes the Midrash and says, Banai shesavlu, my kids that suffered in Egypt, Yiru b'simchat Torah. they could see the joy of the Torah coming. But Yitro that's that happy, he can't see the Torah coming. And that's why they had to throw him back out and bring him back again. What's going on over here? Comes the Ramban and writes, we learn from here a lesson that in order to merit to be by Ma'amad Har Sinai, you have to first go through the suffering of Egypt. Without the suffering of Egypt, you're not qualified to be by Har Sinai. That's a condition. And now it's our job to explain why is that a condition. God's not a sadist. Why is that a condition? So comes the Shlach Kadosh in Parashat Lech Lecha. And Rabbeinu Yitzchak Abuha ben Yosef Menorat HaMaor also writes the same concept with different words. Borei Olam wanted to stamp us with a stamp of slavery, that we should learn what it means to be an Eved, a slave. And therefore, that was the reason why He put us in Egypt. Because once we'll learn slavery from the physical perspective, we'll later on be able to learn what it means to be an Eved Hashem, a servant of God. And therefore, Yitro, that didn't learn slavery, he wasn't qualified to be by Matan Torah, because he can't be an Eved Hashem by default. He's missing the foundation of Avdut. Am Yisrael that went to Egypt, they were able to be by Matan Torah, because they have the idea of Avdut in them. And that's why we read in the Haggadah, Chol dor vador chayav adam la'arot tatzmo ki'ilu hu yatsa miMitzrayim. To reiterate and to reinforce in ourselves the idea of Avdut, of Avdei Hashem, that we're slaves of God. But what does it mean to be an Eved? There's one main difference between an Eved and a free man. That a free man makes his own decisions, and an Eved doesn't. Meaning, if there's a guy in the olden days when they still had a slave market, who's being sold as a slave, and he says, listen, I'll be a slave, but on Mondays between 9 and 12, whatever you say doesn't count. Would anybody buy him as a slave? No, that's not a slave. A slave has no will. His will is whatever his owner's will is. That's it. But on his own, there's no will. A free man has free will. He does whatever he wants. That's the difference between an Eved and a Ben Chorim. Based on this, come the Chachamim, the holy rabbis, and they say, the Sifri writes this, that whenever there's a mitzvah in the Torah that's hard, we're almost done, 5 more minutes. You come out with a chidush that's priceless, it's worth it. Whenever there's a mitzvah in the Torah that's hard, God right away reminds us of Egypt. For example, the mitzvah of ribit. It's my money. Why shouldn't I make more money on my money? I'm giving you my money. Pay me interest. It makes sense. The bank does it. Everybody else does it. It's mine. Comes God and says, don't loan another Jew with ribit. Why? Because you were a slave in Egypt. And when you came out of slavery, it wasn't to be a free man. It was to be an Eved Hashem. And it's true you have a nice theory, and your opinion is right. But I said otherwise. And a slave doesn't question. Midot v'mishkolot. It's so hard not to cheat in business. I have a close friend who owned 22 mechanic shops in New York City. Extremely successful. And one day he closed everything overnight. And I asked him, why'd you close? Were you crazy? You had a booming business. What'd you do? At least wait till you sell it to a guy for a big amount of money, make an exit on the company, something. What'd you do? He said, I walked in one day into the shop, and I saw one of my Jewish workers, that an old lady came in with a car, with a tow truck that wasn't working. And it was missing a little piece, a spark plug that cost $20. And he told the lady, you have to change the transmission. And he pulled out the transmission, he spray painted it in a fresh silver, and he stuck it back in, and he charged it $3,500. And I went to the guy, and they're doing this to you all the time in the mechanic shops. You ever realize you go in for an oil change and suddenly your bill is $1,000? You went in for a $20 oil change. Today, there are a lot of mechanic shops in New Jersey that do oil changes for free. Because they just want to get you in there. And then they'll convince you that this is broken and that's broken. Half your car's broken. It's brand new. You got a Lexus 3 weeks ago. It's already broken. Whatever. We just got to change. He said, I realize the temptation is stealing in this business. And I don't want to put myself in the test to be a crook. This is not a business I could be in. I gave it all away. I'm not interested. I'm done. Unbelievable what a strong Jew is. So being honest in business is a big test. Why shouldn't I round it off a little bit? Why shouldn't I make the, tell the guy that the stone has a certificate when it doesn't have one? Or when we printed one from the back door. Why shouldn't I do it? What's the big deal? Who's going to know? This guy... And then some people tell me even more than that. He's an idiot. He doesn't know anything about clothes anyway. I'll tell him it's made in Italy. He doesn't know how to read English. Who cares that it was made in Taiwan? What does it make a difference with it? Let him pay full retail. Once I went into a boutique store in Manhattan, and I asked the guy if he had a certain designer suit. He tells me, Rabbi, let me tell you something. It's all the same junk. You tell me what name you want me to sew in, I'll sew it in for you. And he takes me downstairs to his store in the basement where the tailor is. They have boxes labeled Gucci, Xenia, Prada. They'll sew in whatever label you want. It's a nisayon. It's a test. Comes God and says, you know how you're going to pass the test? I'm the God who took you out of Egypt. You'll remember that. You'll remember you're an Eved. Your opinion doesn't count at that point. You'll behave. You won't remember that, you won't behave. That's what's going to give you the strength to overcome the tough test. Comes the Sifri and writes, that's why in every hard mitzvah of the Torah, God immediately adds on the inyan of Yetziat Mitzrayim. Based on this, comes Rabbeinu Yonah in Masechet Brachot and says a beautiful chidush, and with this we answer all our questions at once. Somech Geulah L'Tfilah doesn't mean that he reads the words. For that you don't go to Gan Eden. That's nothing. For that you could be a poet. We'll give you a diploma, a master's in poetry. Somech Geulah L'Tfilah means that he feels what Geulah means. That he came from Egypt and now he's a free man. And he's a free man for the purpose of being Hashem. And therefore, that's why he prays. His prayer comes out of being an Eved Hashem. A person whose prayers come out of being a real Eved Hashem, his whole prayer is different. Of course he was smiling all day, that rabbi in the Gemara. His whole life is different. Everything's different. And how do you know if your prayer is coming out of Geulah or not? So if, let's say you're not feeling well in the morning, right? Now it's one day it's hot, one day it's cold, one day it's freezing, the flu is back full force. So you woke up with a flu, you have 104 fever, even the Tylenol's not working, you're angry at the whole world. The mayor of New York, stupid mayor, we have to fire him, the train came late yesterday, what do you want from the mayor? Everybody's at fault that you're sick except for you. And now you got to pray Shacharit. And you're Yerei Shamayim, you don't say I'm sick, I'm not praying. You say I'm praying. And you're standing there praying Rifayinu. Are you attacking God and saying, why'd you make me sick? Or are you praying Rifayinu like an Eved? God, you wanted me to be sick, so that's the way it is. Are your prayers a whole list of complaints, everything that you don't like in your life? Or your prayers a whole list of compliments, everything you don't like in your life? Because it makes no difference. It's God. If God sent it, it's good. That's it. Case closed. Comes Rabbeinu Yonah in Masechet Brachot and writes, that's Somech Geulah L'Tfilah. Somebody who lives a life like that is a ben Olam Haba. We asked, it contradicts the Gemara that Olam Haba comes with Yisurim. This is Yisurim. This comes with a lot of work. Years and years of work. You got to work on yourself to get to the level of really being Somech Geulah L'Tfilah properly. Chizkiyahu HaMelech. Why didn't he tell God that he taught the whole world Torah? Because that would have not helped him. Because his sin was that he mixed his mind, his opinion, with God's opinion. God said, get married. He said, I'm not getting married. He came to God and said, I realized my mistake. And now I'm doing the right thing. What's the right thing? I'm Somech Geulah L'Tfilah. I'm an Eved Hashem. I have no questions. I'm not mixing my mind into your business anymore. Whatever you say, that's what I do. At that point, God accepted his prayer. He was saved. Based on this, we end off Gan Eden. We said that the Yerushalmi wrote that the 4 cups that we drink are against the 4 cups, against the 4 parashiyot. And just like you're not allowed to stop between the 3rd and 4th parashiyah, Parashat Parah and Parashat HaChodesh, you can't stop between the 3rd and 4th cup, right? You drink the 3rd cup, immediately you finish the Hallel, boom, you got to drink the 4th cup. No stop, you can't eat, can't drink, can't do nothing. Why? What's Parashat Parah? It's a chok, a mitzvah that we don't understand. Even Shlomo HaMelech said, I thought I was smart, but this one's bigger than me. I don't understand it. Why would you listen to a law that makes no sense? Only because you feel like you're an Eved. That's what the boss says, so I listen. So when you read Parashat Parah, you read Avdut, a chok. I'm an Eved Hashem. What do you read right after that? HaChodesh hazeh lachem urosh chalashim. God took me out of Egypt based on my Avdut. So I should continue in life to be able to be an Eved Hashem. And if you stop in the middle, you don't put the link together of Mitzrayim and today, then you're in trouble. You miss the foundation of the whole life. We'll end off with a cute story from the Chafetz Chaim. A guy went into the Chafetz Chaim and told him he was a Machalel Shabbat. And he told him, Rabbi, I want to do teshuvah, I want to become religious, I was convinced, I heard a good seminar, whatever, it sounded good. I want to... 612 mitzvot, beautiful, I'm going to keep them all dancing and singing. There's one mitzvah that I don't get along with so well. This is which mitzvah? Kosher. That one I don't like. So why not? I like eating snails and shrimps. That's what I like in life. Maybe the reason why, I don't know if in the story he said kosher. I'm giving you this reason, I'll tell you why. Machilat, I'm saying this in public, but you should know what goes on in the world, it's good. I was in Pennsylvania one night this week on business, and at night I had to stay in a hotel there overnight. And in the morning, I was supposed to have a 9 o'clock meeting in the morning. And it wasn't applicable, it got delayed for 2 hours. So the guy, one of my workers that was with me, he tells me, Rabbi, I want to show you something amazing. I said, what? He takes me to a guy's house. He says, you know, like you Jews have like slaughter people, he meant shochtim. He says, yeah. He says, here in Pennsylvania, they also have a guy like that. I said, what's the big deal? Everywhere has slaughterhouses. What, are you taking me to a slaughterhouse? What do I need to see a slaughterhouse for? He says, no, but they don't slaughter cows or chickens there. They do something else. So I said, what do they do? He says, he's a specialist at roasting turtles. You go to the pond, you fish a turtle, you bring it to this majnoon, and he hangs it up. I don't even want to tell you, or you won't sleep all night. I said, I had to see this, because this crazy guy took me there. It makes turtle soup, this, that, everything turtles you want, they eat turtles. So the guy comes into Chafetz Chaim, I'll keep Shabbat, kosher, I'll keep it. Kosher not. Why not kosher? I need my turtle soup. Rabbi, that one not. So what was the Chafetz Chaim going to tell him? Listen to what the Chafetz Chaim told him. And this concludes our class tonight. The Chafetz Chaim told him like this. I agree with you. I'm on your side, man. 612, all you're missing is one. If you had a sales guy, went to 613 clients, 612 he sold to, one he didn't. He's going to get a raise the next day. That's the biggest dream in the world. I agree with you, it sounds good. He said, but there's one problem. If the Torah was mine and God worked for me, so then I was able to give you a discount. This mitzvah you don't have to do. I would even give you a 50% discount. I'm a generous guy. 75%, why not? But since the Torah is God's and I'm His servant, I don't want my boss to fire me. So I can't do anything without the boss's permission. Go upstairs to him, talk to him. If he gives you a discount, good. If not, I got nothing to do with it. What the Chafetz Chaim told him in one sentence was what it means to be an Eved Hashem. And on this the Chachamim teach us, En ben chorin ela mi she'osek b'Torah. Who's really free? Somebody who studies Torah. It's not a superstitious thing, a religious thing. It has nothing to do with that at all. You don't study Torah, so you become a slave to everything else in your life. It's a hot summer day. You're sitting Sunday by a barbecue. Everything's working out well, but they forgot one thing, beer. I'm dying for a Corona. Whenever anybody outside on my porch tells me that, I say, drop dead. I'm dying for the new iPhone. I'm dying for a new car. I'm dying for this. I'm such a slave that my whole life is worthless now because I don't have a Corona. Comes the Torah and says, a real Eved knows that through slavery to Hashem, you have real freedom because everything's good. You have it all. God hasn't made. He created the world. He knows what's good for you. And wherever you're led in life, it's always good. But the Olam should help. That we should be real Bnei Chorim in life. Free people that are osek b'Torah, machzik Torah, mechabed et HaTorah v'lomdea, tizku l'shanim rabot, ni'imot v'tovot.